Good morning, everybody. Today is the 23rd of April, 2025, and I am your host, Drake Martinez of the Drake Martinez Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And today we're going to be talking about the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. I know that we are probably somewhere close with the day 94 or 95, something like that. But nevertheless, we're going to be discussing the first 100 days, and I'm going to give a report card on what I think the Trump administration has been doing so far. And yeah, so there's lots to discuss. And I think he came off to a really great start. Actually, first, before I get into that, I want to acknowledge all the listeners. Thank you guys for tuning in. And yeah, I know it's been a little time. I think it's been about since maybe January that I've had a podcast episode. So, my schedule's been pretty busy, but I think right now I'm hitting a stride and should be able to do weekly, if not bi-weekly episodes. So again, thank you guys so much for your love and support and the attention that you give to the podcast. I love you and happy to have as many listeners or as few listeners as there is. I do this because I enjoy it, and I enjoy and I enjoy thinking about and discussing the topics that I discuss. So sometimes it's music, sometimes it's current events, sometimes it's, other things, but today we're talking about the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. I think that if I reflect back, even before the Trump presidency, the first one, that I didn't really become politically aware until I want to say circa 2012. It was right around that era that I started realizing, hey, things are kind of weird going on around here. And I wonder what's actually going on behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz, if you will. And it was right around that time that I started learning about all sorts of things. Some of those ideas I've abandoned, some of them have grown stronger in terms of conspiracies, and some of them I'm just well, I don't really care. That's neither here nor there, but it does give me some perspective about when I pay attention and when I don't. So during the second Obama term, I started really paying attention. I was like, hey, what's going on with this guy Obama? He's doing a lot of weird stuff. Then he went to Cuba, and then he started talking about in South America about how, in the future we won't have to pick from capitalism or socialism. We can just pick from what works. And if you're picking from what works, you pick capitalism, because socialism has never worked, never will work. So it's kind of mind-blowing that the President of the United States was saying that in South America, of all places. So many crazy things were happening during his second term. I mean, even the Syrian civil war and the refugee crisis. It seemed like the world was on fire during Obama's administration, and I paid attention. And then Trump came on the scene, and as soon as he came on the scene, I was like, oh, I want that guy to be president. It was right. I remember the moment that it happened, when I saw him at the Republican debate, the first one, when there was 16 people on stage, and he was just crushing all of them, making them look stupid. And back then, the idea of closing the border and building a wall was anathema to not just to the Democrats, but to the Republicans. I mean, some of the same people that you hear, being almost identical to Trump in terms of his immigration policies that he had in 2016 or 2015, were calling it racist back then. They were like, oh, this is terrible. Just Marco Rubio was one. Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush fell off the scene, and if I remember correctly, I think Ted Cruz did too. His whole vote your conscience thing. So he fundamentally changed the Republican Party, and I was at the time more of a Ron Paul kind of person. I was like, oh, these are the guys that make the most sense to me. They're the most sensible. They're the most constitutionally sound people. But what I saw in Trump was an opportunity to break a broken system. that the system was broken and it needed a bull in a china shop to wake the people up out of their slumber. What I didn't anticipate was just how divided the country was. I kind of knew, but I didn't really fully grasp it until recently, just how divided the country is. And it's very difficult to gauge exactly how divided it is because of the media. And because if we're talking about pure numbers, I don't think that there's as much of a voice or a propensity to be on the left as there is because of the media. And I think, again, when we think about this idea of like varying degrees of paying attention, that admittedly, when Trump got into office, I stopped really paying attention. I didn't really care any. Not that I wouldn't say I didn't really care anymore, but I was like, hey, I got my guy in. I got the guy in that I thought would do a great job. I'm not really going to pay attention to too much what he was doing, and I focused way more on my music, and I focused way more on other things. My career. And once he was removed from office, I didn't really, during COVID and all that, I was still like more focused on my career and more focused on my music and didn't really pay too much attention during that time. And it wasn't until things started getting really bad during the Biden administration that I was like, hey man, this country, I got a baby on the way. I got a wife. I got dreams and hopes and all these other things that I want to do with my life and my family's life. And is there going to be a country that I grew up in, like a very, anything resembling that my daughter will inherit if these Jacobins are still in charge? Is there anything going to be like that in the future? So I was like, it's time to pay attention again. And if you think about that there must be on the flip side, on the other side, that same tendency, right? That people who lean Democrat or people who lean towards the left are like, well, I wasn't really paying attention to what Joe Biden or what Obama did because, those were the guys that I voted for. And, I just kind of trusted that they would, they were going to do what I elected them to do, and there's in my opinion, a substantive difference in terms of the morality and the policy that these two different factions enact and like how they behave themselves and the things that they do for the country. But that doesn't negate the fact that people may or may not be paying attention depending on their own bias, right? So I think all of this is to say that I am paying attention to this Trump administration this time around, not because I don't trust what he's doing, that he's doing the right thing. I do trust he's doing the right thing, by and large. And I've reflected back and look back historically on the 2016 to 2020 presidency that, the 45th presidency. And I noticed a lot of mistakes, but I also noticed a lot of clear intention and learning from his mistakes and a confidence that has grown from that. And, this week and last year, but especially, recently I've been reading a lot of the Bible, and the Bible points out a lot of people's flaws in parallel to their victories and their triumphs. So all that is to say, we're almost like 10 minutes in now, but I don't like to do a podcast like other people do podcasts where they just rant about the news and they just, this article. I like to give some philosophy and some thought and some historical context to the things that have been happening, because it's really important to understand how we got to where we're at. And nothing that Trump has done in this presidency has been in a bubble, in a vacuum. It's all been in the context of 2016 to 2020, 2020 to 2024, and his second, the most recent presidential campaign that he led, where he almost got killed. He got shot in the ear, almost died on national television, and all of that is in play. All of that is relevant to the things that are happening. And there might be some extraordinary things that happen in the future. And we have to take all of that into account. We have to take all of that into the context of what he's doing, how he's doing it, and why he's doing it. For example, we get to, let's review the first 100 days. And I'm just going from memory. I'm not looking at any notes. I'm not looking at any websites. I'm just going off of memory. That within his first 48 to 72 hours of being president, there was a wave of executive orders that covered everything from energy, aiming to lower the cost of energy in the United States by opening up pipelines and opening up, using the Department of the Interior through, I think is Doug Burgum, I believe is his name, to the Interior Secretary to open up energy investments and energy production in the United States. And that was in direct contrast with Biden, who, with I think his very first executive order, or one of his very first executive orders, was to close the Keystone Pipeline. And this is obviously huge. And I think, we're starting to see right now the ramifications of that energy prices are going down. And once energy prices go down, they bring down the cost of virtually everything else. Consider that the surge of egg prices. Now egg prices have come down a little bit. They've gone back up. I think very recently, my wife and I paid a little bit more for eggs than we did last, in the month prior, or 3 weeks prior to that. But, there's been some progress made in terms of the egg prices and the in the chicken market. So you're seeing different price. You're seeing prices coming down because of energy. There was also the wave of executive orders that closed the border and had all sorts of other executive orders that impacted illegal immigration. And we're starting to see even more now, where there was, if you go on to USCIS.gov, there is a chilling notice on there that says something to the effect of, so not backtrack before we get into the USCIS.gov website, that he closed the border, he closed that CBP1 app, relitigated remain in Mexico, and the border crossings dropped, I think it was over 90%. And that is crazy, because there was just a few months ago, or maybe 6-7 months ago now, if I remember correctly, that senators and congressmen and women on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, but mostly Democrats, were saying, well, Joe Biden needs additional resources from Congress to be able to close the border. He can't just do it on his own. He needs Congress. And this was the most disgusting display of gaslighting and propaganda that I mean, in a world of propaganda, this one I thought just ate the cake. It was just unbearable, because anybody with half a brain knows that that's not the truth. That Biden did everything that he could to open the border via executive order. That he's the executive. He's the executive that's in charge of executing the laws, enforcing the laws, and he's in charge of DHS. He's in charge of the Border Patrol. He's in charge of the border. It's in the Constitution that the land that the federal property is D.C., the ports of entry, and that falls under the executive jurisdiction. And then he even went so far as to combat against Texas state actions to enforce border law when he wasn't doing it. So the idea that he needed additional authority and additional support from Congress is not only patently false, it has been proven false. Because what new legislations have happened in terms of the border? Well, period. I think there was just another continuing resolution. Congress has just proven itself to be totally ineffective. But that's separate. But what new legislations have come into place, and now the border crossings are a fraction of what they were just a year ago today? Nothing. It all, just as we were saying, it all fell under the authority that was vested in the executive, the chief executive, the president of the United States. So that was immense. I mean, if he doesn't accomplish anything else, that alone right there is fantastic. I think that he's done a number of other things that were great, but the main controversies or the main points of contention were the tariffs and then recently the deportation. I don't remember the guy's name, Garcia or something like that. This guy that was sent back to El Salvador. But first with the tariffs. Okay, so I think that there was a lot of people that were like, okay, well, the stock market is just going crazy. It's going up and down. I lost money. I'm going to be frank. I lost money. If I balance that out with gold, I probably kind of like broke out even. It's kind of like going net positive now. But you don't only lose if you sell. 2, I do feel for some of the people that are like, getting ready to retire, but most of their money should have been in bonds anyways. And I do get that the bond market did go down too. But when did we become a country of using the stock market to dictate policy that is obviously good? We've never been a country like that. If we go back to World War II, people paid a price, a personal price, not just people that went to war and died and saw all sorts of horrific things, but people on the home front paid a price. They worked at the manufacturing facilities to make ammunition, to make bombs, to make the tanks. The whole economy was mobilized to defend the homeland and to defend itself against these existential threats, like legitimate existential threats. And we face existential threats today. We're just in a slumbering sleepwalk, walking ourselves off of a cliff. And these lessons were all learned in 2020, that China owns these shipping routes, that China owns the medical supplies, that China owns the means of production in order for us to get them, to get the microchips that we need. And what happens if they decide to take Taiwan? What happens if we have to go to war with them over Taiwan? Or if we have to engage with them in any kind of level of combat over Taiwan? All of these lessons were already learned in 2020, that some level of manufacturing essential national security required items need to be made in the United States. The lesson was already learned. I don't think that's a debatable fact. So, how does a president, think about it? How does a president of a capitalist country, a democracy, encourage manufacturing to be done in the United States? He can't by decree, just like, hey, I'm going to open up a government of manufacturing semiconductors. I'm going to open up a department of, you know, bio, you know, biomedical and capacity, or biomedical equipment. That's not within the jurisdiction of the federal government to manufacture or produce these things. Government can't produce or do any of those produce these things. That's not how any government's designed to do it, and that's not especially how ours is designed to do it. So, what resources or what methods does the president have at his disposal to ensure that these things can happen? The answer is tariffs. Now, am I happy that I got to pay, a certain price in terms of like my 401k or my investment accounts, not being so high in the short term, mind you, in the short term, right? It's not like this is a perpetual thing. This is just, hey, right now the market's adjusting. Things are moving, people are going to start moving their money. There's uncertainty. The market is a reflection of confidence, and there's not a whole lot of confidence when things are shifting back and forth. Got it. But is that a price that I'm willing to pay as an American citizen to say, hey, you know what? My stock portfolio is a little bit down, but at least we got some national security. At least I can sleep better at night, and I can feel comfortable knowing that if there is another pandemic, or if China just decides, boom, hey, I'm going to slap a tariff on you, and my military is now at a point where I feel confident that I'm going to slap an embargo on you, and you're not going to get any more of those medical supplies or microchips or semiconductors that your country needs so desperately. That's a worse predicament to be in. Anybody that works out knows that you have some short-term pain for some long-term gain. So I think it's very bold and amazing leadership that he took that on, because it's something that he could only do in his second term. This is something that a first-term president could not do. They would not get reelected because, unfortunately, this country is just like so short-sighted. But that's what I'm here to talk about today is like we have to have long-term thinking, and we have to not have so much knee-jerk reaction to these types of measures. Now imagine again, unless if Trump said, "Hey, look, next week or 2 months from now, when I need you guys to plan accordingly, okay? Power nationwide is going out. We're not going to have any power for 3 days. There's going to be a national emergency around developing our electrical infrastructure. Too many of our transformers, too many of our power grids are, they're obsolete. They're a national security risk. Anybody that comes in and takes them out is, liable to shut the country down for weeks at a time, and the ramifications of that is catastrophic. Probably not recoverable ever, right? So for those 3 days, yeah, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be great. You're not going to have TV. You're not going to have Wi-Fi. You're not going to have anything. Get some candles ready. Get your water. Get everything that you need to do. Get some MREs. Cook outside. Do whatever you got to do for those 3 days. But we need this to happen in order for our national grid to be secure. I mean, we're a country right now where something like that people would riot. People are, I need my Wi-Fi. I need my Google. I need that right now. I need it. They wouldn't be able to survive 3 days without it. And I think of how sad and pathetic that is. Oh yeah, we can't, and again, like maybe there's a way to do it. I'm sure that there's a way to do it without shutting down the entire country's power for 3 days. What I'm trying to illustrate is a point of our unwillingness to sacrifice short-term comforts for long-term security and self-sufficiency. And I get that the global market is different right now. It's not, the year isn't 1925, it's 2025. And there's some level of globalization in terms of the global markets, and I get that. I get the whole Milton Friedman's famous, no one person can make this pencil. I get it. I think it's wonderful, but we still should be able to strike a balance between, we import and we do trade and we export and we do all these great things, but we also recognize, hey, these items are essential. These things are essential. Having dignity of our citizenry to being able to work jobs that aren't just office jobs, but have a variety of jobs, that people can have pride in making things in America and supplying other American companies with products that are solely made in America. It boosts our national security. It boosts our national morale. It allows us to be a country, just like the reason why we need a border, just like the reason why we need to have an identifiable, unique culture and language that is unique to us, that we have a unique history. We need to have an economy that is very well-rounded and robust, and we don't have that right now. We have a very flimsy service sector, financial, powerhouse, but you need to have all these different assets. You need to have all of these different markets that work for your country. And if you don't have it, then you need to make some decrees and some policies that incentivize people to do it. That's what the tariffs were all about. And, and I kind of, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with him doing short-term pain for long-term gain. I think it's bold. I think it's amazing. And I'm willing to acknowledge and participate in that sacrifice, as long as there's transparency and as long as there is a sense of like national unity, behind it, which, going back to that idea, or like one of the first things I was talking about is I underestimated like how divided the country is that you really actually saw it during the tariffs. Contrast. Here's where you really learn something about how divided America is. Contrast how the Canadians responded to the American tariffs to how the Americans responded to the Canadian tariffs. Whatever the percentage is of conservatives or of people that are patriotic in America, they were like, wow, okay, well, there's some tariffs. Kind of sucks. It's not the greatest thing, but I'm an American. I love America. I'm here to do my part. Whatever percentage of Americans are like, oh, this tariffs are terrible. We're gonna, investigate these people for insider trading, etc. Right? Contrast that with the Canadians, where the Canadians were boycotting our goods. They were like, hey, yeah, you know what? Those American strawberries, even though they're cheaper, I'm going to buy these Canadian strawberries. Hey, that American beer, even though it might taste better than Canadian beer, I'm going to buy the Canadian beer because I'm a Canadian and I'm proud of my country. That is the kind of national unity that we need. And although Trump is doing all the things that he can to make the country great again, I oftentimes wonder how great the country can be when 40 to 45% of the country won't allow it to be great. They actively engage in subterfuge and sabotage to make the country worse. they're diametrically opposed to America being great again. And nothing highlighted that more than the tariffs. And then if that wasn't enough, I'm not going to really talk about the judges. It would take too much out of my soul to just talk about these judges and the decisions that they're making. But they did come to a decision on the situation that happened with that guy that got sent down to El Salvador. And I don't really know what else to say beyond that. Millions of other people or thousands of people haven't already said, which is that he is home. He went to his home. He's an illegal immigrant. He came here illegally, and it's kind of crazy to think that there's all these people that bypassed our legal process and just walk into our country and then demand a legal process before they're kicked out. That's kind of astounding to me. And I've heard some people talking about that Trump may need to suspend habeas corpus. I'm pretty sure the last person that did that was Lincoln. FDR might have done it. I think FDR did it. I'm not really sure. I'd have to crack open a history book. I don't do this podcast with a laptop, and I don't do it with any information at my fingertips. I just go out, like I said, I just shoot from the hip. I go from my brain, from what I've got in my old brain here. But if I remember correct, I know for sure Abraham Lincoln did it. I'm like 70% sure that FDR did it too. Is the suspension of habeas corpus in order for him to be able to get all these people out that Biden let in, and that the Democrats are so happy to keep in because they know that is their only pathway to being a legitimate party ever in the future, is through the import of people that shouldn't be here. All in all, I'd give Trump's administration a B right now. I think that he had really great, bold leadership for the tariffs. His executive orders were awesome. The executive order to end birthright citizenship is amazing. So many of the things that he did was great. However, I think that the FBI and the DOJ is not doing anywhere near enough. I know that there are people that our country won't be able to function legally and be taken seriously if the people that sold the country out to the degree that they did are left alone. And I know that Trump did a great step with his White House lab leak page on COVID.gov. On the White House, it's amazing. It talks all about the lab leak being legitimate, that is the most likely scenario. The cover-up from Fauci and the NIH, and the medical malpractice that was evident in New York State. However, I don't like that the only person or high-profile person that's been in, I don't even know if she's been indicted. I think they're just recommended for indictment. I don't really know, but it's like Letitia James, the New York AG. And it's like there's so many other people that need to get their crimes exposed, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if the Democrats came into power, a whole lot of other people would have been rounded up and tossed into prison. So I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm just saying it's necessary. It's necessary for criminals to pay for their crimes. It's necessary for traitors to be exposed for their treason. It's necessary for people who have made careers off of sabotage, subterfuge, and espionage, and selling out America, and taking bribes and all these other crazy things that have happened. They just need to go to jail for it. There needs to be an era of accountability. And I think that if if I had to guess, if Trump rounded up all those people and just say, hey, these are the people that we're getting, that are getting indicted. These are the crimes. This is what they did. Obviously he can't get the people that that got the pardons, like Fauci and what's his name, the senator from California. I can't remember his name. That's how unimpressive and unimportant he is. But whatever that guy's name is, people call him Pencil Neck. I just kind of think of him as Pencil Neck. I can't think of anything else when I see that guy's face in my mind's eye. But what I would imagine that if he did do that the media would go crazy. But I don't think the people would care. I don't think that they would care that much. I think that they would actually be kind of happy about it. I know that there's like the political class, elite wing of X and of the mainstream media and cable news and all that would just be reeling from it, and all the the tyrants in Europe would America, I don't know, that kind of sounded maybe Japanese. I was trying to do French, I think it was. America. Or Italian. Oh, the Italian prime minister is cool, it seems. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like, all these tyrants in Europe are like, oh, what's going on in America? Like, what are they doing? Imprisoning their political dissidents. And it's like, shut up. Just shut up. No one cares what you have to say about anything in Europe. Just go away. Anyways, I think the Republicans would probably lose the midterms, but Trump's got to act and operate, and so does Congress. Like, they've only got weeks to act, not years, and all of this stuff needs to be codified like while they have power, and they have to plan like it's short term. They have to plan like they've only got a very, very limited amount of time to get all these things done, and do it now before the next Biden administration comes in and ushers in another pandemic and another boot on people's necks. And yeah, that's how I think about it. So overall, I give them a B. I think the DOJ just needs to do more and start cleaning things up. That's all I got for you guys today. I'll have another episode for you guys next week. I think next week I'm probably going to not do politics. I'll probably do, unless there's like something crazy that happens that I want to comment on. But I think next week I'll probably do either music or film. So, well, that's all I got. That's it I got for you guys today. That's all I got, or maybe even philosophy, actually. So stay tuned next week to find out what the topic's going to be, but it's definitely not going to be politics unless it's something really, really crazy happens between now and next week. Love you guys, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.